Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Nun Vav in Baba Kama. We started Hakones yesterday as we learned for we're holding about 10, 12 times down on the page. Right before you see the parentheses there with the word Simon, right before there we see we were up to there Basuleka. That's where we were up to yesterday. Meaning, yesterday we had a brisa. Rav Shapiro said there are four things that your pater medine adam, a regular court cannot hold you responsible, but still you're not such a good guy. God will get you for it. Chayav b'dinei shemayim. You're chayav b'dinei shemayim. God's going to hold you responsible for it, even though technically we can't pin it on you. And he said what those are. The first one is if you break down somebody else's fence and let his animal out, and the animal went and did damage. So you didn't really do anything. You just opened up the door. Yeah, but you indirectly caused it. It's an indirect damage, and we hold that Grama ben Azikin is potter. The Gemara said, well, what about the wall? You broke down his wall or broke down his door in order to get it out. So we're talking about where it was a weak wall anyway. We'll talk more about that. That was one case. Then we said about a case where you pushed down your neighbor's grain, and then a fire came and took it. Well, aren't you obviously responsible there if there's a fire on the way? No, we're talking about where the fire wasn't expected to hit that part. You couldn't have anticipated, but still you're not such a tzaddik. What were you doing there anyway, pushing his grain down? If you hire a false witness, you didn't do anything yourself. You hired a false witness to testify against somebody else, right? If he testify against somebody else on your behalf, then you stole the money from the guy. You have to pay him back. No, we're speaking about where you hired a false witness and it was for somebody else to testify against somebody else. Not you weren't personally involved. You weren't one of the litigants, and that's why you're not technically responsible. It's the other guy who did the bad thing. The other guy, you hired him, who asked you didn't have to lie. It wasn't your fault. You had no financial interest in it. And the last case was where testimony about somebody as an individual witness, and you didn't testify. Now, if you're part of two witnesses, the Gemara said, then you're over a deraisa. Lo yagit. Of course, we know it's obvious. It's min Torah that Hashem's going to hold you responsible. What's Rav Yeshua's chiddush? We're speaking about where you're a single witness, and therefore you could argue, okay, I was a single witness. I couldn't have been mechayev in money anyway. Maybe he would have denied it, and he wouldn't have had to pay. So I didn't necessarily cause the loss. So in all these cases, the loss is indirect. It's not a direct damage, and therefore you're part of it. So the Gemara says, but there are many things like that. We know, even without going through the Gemara, you could know that there are many cases where you didn't do anything that a court would hold you responsible for, but you weren't such a good guy. Like you maybe you dented his car a little bit, and they always get out of the car. It doesn't look like you did anything, and they drive off. That kind of a thing. But still, you're somewhat responsible. But there are many cases like you could think of that way. So the Gemara says, Vasulekar, there are no others. Voika, we have this right after the parentheses in the Gemara, about 12, 13 lines down. Now, mechatas is the pure spring water that you use, and it's mixed with the ashes of the paraduma to create what's called the chatas water, the chatas water that you're sprinkled with in order to purify yourself from having come in contact with a dead person. And that's what you need at the time of the Beis Hamikdash. That's how you purify yourself after attending a funeral. You'd have to be sprinkled on the third and seventh day with the paraduma water. Now, the paraduma water, called the mechatas, before you put the ashes into the water, and it was after you took it straight from the spring into a clean pot, and you put it in there, if you did any work with the water, just like if you did work with the animals, it's a didn't do any work with you didn't do any work with the animal. If you did any work with the animal's possible. The same way, if you did any work at all, carrying the water around, doing somebody a favor with whatever it was, that water is no good. So let's say somebody donated their water. They went and they made an effort. They got a proper, let's say a new earthenware vessel, filled it with water from a spring, and was on their way. They schlepped it all the way up there, and then you took it and did some work with it. You did something. You were paid to do something, or you hired somebody to do something, but you did some work with it. You've ruined the water. Rashi Tosas points this out. This is this is one of the cases where that's what we call hezek shein ariyah. You can't see it. Hezek shein nikar. Hezek she'ein nikr, is that called the hezek? If I did damage to you, but you can't tell. For example, I took your truma and I was matama it, right? You can't see it. It's tama, it's defiled, but you can't see it. It looks the same. That's called hezek she'ein or nikr. Is that hezek she'ein nikr? Is that called the hezek or not? Can you be held responsible? So this partially goes the idea that it's hezek she'ein nikr, and therefore you're not responsible. But then he automatically be din shemayim because you have caused this person a loss. He's going to have to go now and get some more water. We had this last week. If you put some poison, always come back to the cats. You put some poison in front of your neighbor's animal, and the animal dies by eating it. Gemara doesn't address the Sar Balachayim aspect of it. Let's assume it was an immediate death, arsenic or something. You're putting it in the because who asked the animal to eat it? You didn't force the animal to eat it. You didn't actually feed it to him. Right, you didn't feed it to him. You put it down. He ate it. So you put them in him. It's still chayv neshman because you stuck it there. You knew the animal would eat it. Let's say you had a little fire. You had a torch and something was burning, right? And you gave it to a chesed for cutting, and he went to somebody else's field and burned it down. You didn't do it. He did it. Yes, but you were irresponsible. But because of that, you're putting it on because you didn't do anything directly. You scared somebody. You frightened them terribly, and that caused them some emotional distress. Again, you didn't do anything directly to them that's going to cause them a direct financial loss. We had this case earlier. Below Soka, let's say your barrel broke in Shisarabim, and you didn't remove it. You didn't remove it right away. Are you responsible there? Enough for gamla, or your camel fell down, you didn't lift it up. Rav Meir says you're chayiv over there because you were nechshol. You should have. It's like you left the bor in the Rishus Harabim. You're responsible for that. Rav Meir says that you're chayiv, whereas v'chamam you're patur b'dinei am chayiv nishmaim. So here's another case where you're patur b'dinei am chayiv nishmaim. Had it only been this case, the Gemara could have said, well, we're not talking about a case with a machlokas. The other cases, the first 3-4 cases, were not a machlokas. So, but the point is, we prove why isn't that a bore? So we had before. So here he says that we gave the reason before. Is a niskal poshea. If you tripped, are you considered negligent or not? You could say it was an accident. It was an accident. So I didn't pick it up yet. I didn't put it down on purpose. Of course, when you did it on purpose, here it was an accident. So the machlokes is isn't niskal poshea. Not Rav Meir says, yeah, you are chayiv. You're chayiv. You should have. You fell down. You should have watched where you were going. It's your fault. And the chum say no, niskal is not a poshea. But in any case, we see that there's many cases here of patmin and chayiv d'shmaim. Ain mia ikatuv. You're right. The truth is there are many cases. The reason Rabbi Shua said these 4 is not that he's saying these are exclusively the cases of patmin and chayiv d'shmaim. He says the chiddush over here is not only a patmin adam, but you're still chayiv d'shmaim because you might think these are also patmin even d'shmaim. Because in these cases, you have specific excuses. For example, what do we mean? Ma'u the same b'din shemayim. In these cases, I might think you're not even chayv b'din shemayim. Even God's not going to hold you responsible. Ma'u the same. I would think b'din shemayim nam l'chayv. Kamashmulan, you are still chayv. Now, why is that? Aparitz get it. If you knock down, you demolish somebody else's fence, and the animal went out. Ma'u the same. I might think kiventul and mystery koi. As we explained the first 2 words on this page, we saw this yesterday. We're talking about a wall that was a weak wall. It was going to fall down anyway. The Mr. Kai was set for demolishment anyway. You're supposed to demolish it. So I might think, Mavi, what did I do? I didn't do anything. It was a weak wall. He said, if it's a strong wall, I should pay for the wall too. I knocked down the wall. The answer was a weak wall. It was a wall that was about to be demolished anyway. And I knocked it down, and the animal went out and did damage. So you're putting it in. Why should it be chayv neshmaim? The wall was going to fall down anyway. What did I do? And that's what I might think. You're not even chayv neshmaim. Kamashmulan, Rabbi Shua, that you are chayv. Or a kof of kamasel shachavero, if I turn down somebody else's corn into in the path of a fire, that you're chayv neshama. The same lame could say as we said before. If it was a ruch mitzuya, then it was a direct damage. But it was a ruch shein mitzuya. It was a hurricane, a tornado. All of a sudden came along. I couldn't have anticipated that. If we did a shemaim nam l'chav, I shouldn't even be responsible to heaven. Kamashmula, no, you are responsible. You should have anticipated. You had no business moving the other guy's grain. Rav Ashi says the chiddush over there is that you covered it up. You covered it up. We said at the top of the page, we said Rav Ashi says tamanit mar shouldn't shavi tamesh. why are you potter? And what's your responsibility over here? Why are you chayiv? Because Talmud, a fire is potter on something. We said yesterday, if you had a stack and you had somebody stuck their cash under the stack, and you sent the fire to burn down the stack, burn down the money, you're potter on the money. Aish is potter on the money because anything that's hidden, you're not responsible for if you set the fire. So over here, Rashi says that what we're talking about, where you covered it up. So why is there no responsibility? I might think I'm a kusiyah kasa, just the opposite. A fire might have been coming. Again, we're not talking about the idea that it was ruch shem surah, even when it was a ruch mitzuya. There fire was coming. I covered it up. You know what I did? I put some, or I did something to it. I covered up the grain so that the fire should not get to it right away. I prevented it from the fire taking hold of the grain right away. That's a matter. I might think that's what I was doing. What I did was I simply covered it up. I did something to help it, and therefore, it shouldn't, to slow down the fire. That's what I did. No, yeah, but what you did was you took away responsibility. Let's say somebody else set the fire, or the fire was just coming along, whatever it was, and you covered it up. You took away responsibility, so you caused him the loss because whoever did set the fire is absolved from paying for it because when the fire consumed this grain, it was covered up. So you caused him a loss indirectly, and therefore you're chayiv b'dei shemayim. If you hire false witnesses, now you hired false witnesses to testify against somebody else. So he said, you're potter b'dei chayiv b'dei shemayim. So you're a bad boy, right? I could say, Lema, Divrei Rabba, Divrei Talmud, Divrei Meshomet. Remember, that's the svara for why ain't shlich l'var. If I sent you to do some terrible sin, not like the common law where the mafia boss is the main guy and the hitman is just, a stooge, and we, make a deal with the hitman to get the, to rat on the boss. Halachically, the one who pulled the trigger is responsible. The other guys may be partially responsible, but the main guy is the guy who did the avera. So over here, if I hire, pardon? He doesn't plea bargain, right? So over here, the guy could say, listen, I hired false witnesses. Who asked them to lie? I hired them, but they didn't have to lie. They're the ones who committed the sin. I shouldn't be responsible even to Shemaim. Kamash b'din Shemaim namelchav. Kamash no. You're chayiv b'din Shemaim. If you know testimony, you're as a single witness. You know some testimony that can help this guy, and you don't testify in his behalf. So who says that my testimony would have had any effect? Remember, when one person testifies, he can't make Reuben pay Shimon. One person testifies that Reuben owes Shimon $100. Can one person make him pay? No. What he can make him do is make a shvuah. So who says so? And you refrained from testifying, so you didn't cause him to make a shvuah, and you didn't make him pay. But who says if I would have testified against him, he would have agreed to pay the $100? Maybe he would have sworn falsely, and Shimon wouldn't have gotten his money anyway. Who says I caused Shimon some indirect harm? I shouldn't be chayiv b'dei shemayim. Kamashmon that you are chayiv b'dei shemayim because you shouldn't have taken that responsibility. You should have testified. If the guy, people think twice about lying falsely. Maybe by testifying against him, and therefore Reuven would have been forced either to pay up or make a shvuah. He might have paid up. So you may have caused him a loss, caused Shimon a loss, and therefore you're responsible. Yeah.
No, I'm just thinking if you want an aid and you don't testify, then someone comes along and a second aid comes by. Then you're required to testify.
You're required either way. But if the second aid comes along with you and you have a second aid, then it's obvious the Torah says that you're responsible for the Shemayim. That's the point. And Lo Yagid is a pasuk. The question was, if there's two aidim over here and one of them refuses, he's responsible. The Torah says in Lo Yagid. So what's Rabbi Yeshua teaching me? Oh, you're chayiv b'din Shemayim. The Torah says you're chayiv b'din Shemayim. You understand? The Torah says that. Or what's his chiddush? The answer is we're talking about there's only one aid. Therefore, one aid cannot be mechayiv. Mamli called mechayiv b'shvuah. So you could say, who says that my testimony would have caused Reuben to pay Shimon, and therefore by not testifying, I caused Shimon a loss? Maybe Reuben would have denied the whole thing and lied falsely. Mashma, we don't say that. You don't assume he would have lied falsely, and you possibly could have caused a loss, and therefore God will hold you responsible. God knows what if the guy would have lied or not, would have testified false, would have sworn falsely or not. the things we just don't know. We say chayv b'nei shemayim, we don't know exactly what the chiyuv is going to be. God will presumably, take retribution in the proper way. So the Mishnah said that if the animal broke, if you locked up your animal in the pen in the barn, and it was a proper guard, even it's a minimal guard, but you locked it up properly, that it would have withstood a normal wind, and the animal went out, you're putter. If you didn't do it properly, then you're chayav. Let's say it broke out at night before you had a chance to notice that the barn door was broken down, or a listim broke it down, then you're not responsible. Amarabba, when you say over here you broke out at night, yet you're putter, that's only if the animals themselves were tunneling under the wall, and that's why the wall broke down. It says nifritz b'layla, the wall broke down, or the door broke down, whatever it was. But did the animals weaken it, and that's why it fell down? That's what Rabbah says. We're talking about the animals weakened it, so it wasn't really your fault because the animals had tunneled underneath and therefore that caused the wall to fall. But if it didn't do it, you'd be chayav. Why? If it broke at night and the wall broke down at night and you didn't get a chance to see it, you would be chayav if the animals didn't cause the wall to fall down. Because we're talking about a regular strong wall, a healthy wall. If it's a healthy wall and the wall somehow fell down, so what if the animals didn't tunnel underneath the wall, then you're chayav? Why? Why are you chayav? What could you have done? You had a proper wall there. For some reason, it fell down. Maybe there was an earthquake. Maybe something happened. It was not your fault. Because we're talking about a weak wall. So if it's a weak wall, if you say if it's a weak wall, and then the animals tunneled underneath it, but it would have fallen down anyway, why are you potter? We had that shala before. It's going to come up again, Bamatzi, in other places. If you were negligent at the beginning, but at the end, it wasn't your negligence that caused the problem. It was an accident. In other words, you were negligent that you left the animals behind a weak wall. At the end, though, the reason the wall fell down is because the animals tunneled underneath it. So it's so that's fine if you hold there's a machlokas. It's if it started out, you were negligent. And then at the end, it turned out that it was an accident. If you hold your putter, fine. Okay, that's why your putter over here, where you say that if the animals dug underneath it, even though it was you were irresponsible by leaving a weak wall there. But at the end, the reason it fell down is because the animals weakened the wall. That's fine. If you hold that you were irresponsible, even if at the end it was an accident, you're still chayiv, Michael and Maimer. What are you going to say? So how do you say over here if it's a weak wall, but then it came down afterwards because the animals tunneled underneath it, you're still responsible? Why does he say that you're potter? He says, Rabbah said, it's only if he tunneled underneath it, you're potter. But if he didn't, you're chayiv. Why? If it's a healthy wall, so you shouldn't be chayiv anyway. And if it's a weak wall, why are you potter if the animal tunneled under it? You should be chayiv because it was a weak wall. You were irresponsible. Ella masnisin because of bari. You're right. The Mishnah speaking about was a good wall. Even if he didn't tunnel underneath it, it wasn't something you could have anticipated. The wall fell down at night before you had a chance. It at night before you had a chance to notice it. Then you're not responsible for the damage the animals did. The Rabbah said, "Who shachosra asafit in the next case." The end of the Mishnah said, let's say you left your animals out in the sun, a place where they would be terribly inconvenienced and they won't be able to withstand the sun. Or you were irresponsible. You gave the animals to be guarded by a chereshet they went out. Then you're chayiv. Rabbah says, even if the animal tunneled out, either you were irresponsible because you left it out in the sun. Even if it tunneled out, you're still chayiv. Certainly, if the animal didn't tunnel out the kulam b'shiu, certainly it's your irresponsibility. You left the animal out in the sun, or you gave it over to somebody who was irresponsible. Of course, you're negligent. Even if the animal tunneled underneath it, that's what he says. That's what Rabbah is saying. Rabbah's going on that part. He's saying Rabbah says even if the animal tunneled underneath the wall, and that's how he got out, and that's how that weakened the wall and he got out. In other words, you left the animal, let's say, in a pen, and the pen was exposed to the sun, and the animal couldn't take it. So the animal went and weakened the wall. He tried to tunnel underneath to get out. So it was originally your negligence, but at the end, it got out because the animal weakened the wall. You might say, and therefore you should be potter if you hold your potter. Kamashman the kulpsh, it's all negligent. My timer. The Omer lay You could say maybe the person who was damaged, the plaintiff will say, look, you know, the Kivan Shafskas, if you left it out in the sun, kol tetzadka the islay mebed of the nafka. Any effort, any tachbut, any trickery that the animal is going to do, he's going to do. In other words, if the animal tried to tunnel out, it's still your fault, because the reason he was trying to tunnel out was because you left him out in the sun. So that's your responsibility, and that's what Rav is saying. He's not going on the first case, he's going on the last case where you left him out in the sun, where it's totally your responsibility, because you knew the animal's going to try every trick to get out of the pen, and therefore you're responsible. Let's see a list. Let's say armed bandits took the animals. You locked it up in your pen, in your barn, whatever. And bandits came, they broke in and they took the animals out. They're chayiv. Of course they're chayiv. They were kona. We're going to have it later on in the ninth parak about the famous thing. How will you kona something if you steal? Cheetah, even the afke. Once they took it out, kamashusas and Yerushus. And top Rashi in the page says, even afke. Once these ganavim, these robbers, bandits came and stole it, Ika Mashicha, they pulled the animals out, Vishina Rishus, and they've taken it from Rishus into their Rishus, or into a place where you could be Kon if it's their Rishus or somebody else's Rishus. But if there's Mashicha and Shina Rishus, Have Knuya L'chol Milei. If there's Shina Rishus and Mashicha, or as we'll talk about later on, it goes on a parak, goes L'eitzim, if there's a Shini Masa, if you change the form of the item, the shape, whatever, you've done some change to the item, and there was also Mashicha, you acquired it. So Pshita Kiva the Afke Kaim of Shas, it now belongs to the Lissim. So if the Lissim's animals did the damage, obviously they're responsible. L'chol milei. For all aspects, it's yours. If your animal goes and does damage, then the animal, you're responsible. The animal's a tam, so you're chayav chatzin, whatever it was, you're responsible. If the animal did damage with Shane, we're talking here in our mission about, we saw yesterday about Shane Beregel, not necessarily goring, but Shane Beregel. They're responsible for that.
So you're saying that stolen property, stolen items, because you're responsible.
That's right. Not only, in other words, we'll get into the shiloh later on. When you steal something and you changed its status, right? You changed it, so you acquired it. You have to pay kushas agil. You have to change its status. So let's say you stole a big block of wood, and you're a carpenter, and you turn that block of wood into a chair or a table or something like that. Now you're caught. Now you stole a block of wood that was worth $100. Now it's worth $1,000 because you've done it. So what is your responsibility? Your responsibility is only to return the block of wood, like the $100, not the $1,000, because you've changed it. By changing the item or moving it to another place, and as well as taking it out physically, you've acquired it. You've acquired it.
Then that cause damage, and you're still responsible.
Then you're definitely responsible because it's yours.
Which they was stolen. You stole a block of wood from me.
Right.
Now you have it, and that block of wood caused damage to somebody.
That's right. So I'm responsible. If I stole it, I'm responsible. That's the point. Regam is responsible. We're saying the listim who took it out, the mission is they're responsible. Of course they're responsible. They acquired it. They stole it. They took it. They moved it to another place. It's theirs. That's the one. So it's obvious. The top of the page again, the Gemara. Shita keeping the afke kaim of Shishayo. Since they took it out, they've acquired it. L'chol milei. The Kamalapah, they didn't really take it out. What they did was they stood there, and they stood there in a way that the animal, they didn't actually to physically take anything. They stood there in a way that forced the animal to go do the damage. So they forced the animal to walk into the neighbor's rishus to eat up his fruits, right? Let's say the damage was done by then, by not leaving him any path. There was a few of these bandits were there together. They usually come in groups, So they stood on either side and forced him to go in, and forced the animal to go in there. That's kava. Together, Rabba Amarav Masna Amarav. If you cause your animal to stand near somebody else's stalks, near somebody else's grain, you're chayiv. So Mamid Pshita, of course I took him there. If I took Mamid, sounds like Rashi says like I took him by hand and I forced him to stand. The Kamala, the answer is like Rabbi said over there. Doesn't mean literally I took my animal by the hand and forced him to go in there. I just stood there forcing him to go in because I didn't give him an option to go anywhere else. That's what we mean over here too. That's the chiddush. Even though he didn't physically take him, he didn't acquire him, but he forced the animal to go in there by not leaving him an option. Therefore, he's chayav. Amalei Abai says Hikisham. In that case that Rav Masna Rav was talking about, you told us not that it wasn't that he stood there, but he stuck him. He hit him with a stick. And as Hikisha B'Makel, also, and that's the case where you're chayiv over there. And here also, listen, Nami Dikisha. That doesn't have to be that you had 20 of the listim were there, and they forced they only opened up a path for the animal to go towards the other property. Didn't have to be like that. He could have hit him with a stick, as we'll see later on. How does Mashiach work? Mashiach either is by pulling the animal, pulling him with the rope, or pulling him physically by hand, or Hikisha B'Makel be Russell If I hit him with a stick, like you see the Arab kids pushing the sheep over there, but with the stick, that's also Mashiach. That's also a kind of Mashiach. That's also a way of acquisition, right? We say that Mashcheni Acharecha Narutza, right? We say that in Shiur, right? Mashcheni Acharecha Narutza, that God pull me and I want to run after you. That's sort of the Mepharshim say that refers to, I think it's the Shlomo says that there's two kinds of Mashiach. One is pull me, like when God has to pull the Jews to Israel, right? Pull them like by the other is Acharecha Narutza. No, I will come by myself. In other words, just give me a little push and I'll go on my own. You don't have to actually pull me there. Just give me a push. One refers to Mashiach where you're pulling, and one where you just give him a little push. And that's also kind of Mashiach. So Mishnah said, Masla Roa, if the shepherd gave the animal to another shepherd, then who's responsible? Shepherd number 2, not shepherd number 1. Now the Gemara says, Amri, it says, Tachtav, took whose place? Whose place? The shepherd or the owner? Amri Tachtav, the Baal, Behema. You're talking about it takes the place of the owner of the animal. We learned that already. If you gave your animal to a shemachin, you gave him to any watchman, they're all responsible in place of the Baalim. In other words, if the animal does damage under the watch, under the guard of a shomer, the shomer is responsible for chatzi nezek, nezek sholem, whatever the case is. They're responsible. So I know that already, that if you gave it to a shomer, masla roa, that's what the Mishnah said. If you gave it over to a roa, to a shepherd, the shepherd takes the place of whom? Who are we speaking about? He says, masla roa, nichtas roa tachta. So we mean who are we talking about? Are we talking about the place of the Baal Bais? We know that already. Ella tachta, the shomer. If the shomer gave it to shomer number 1, gave it to shomer number 2, then the shomer number 2 was responsible. The shomer kamar if delay. The first shomer number 1 is now no longer responsible. He's out of the picture. Legamre. The shomer kamar if delay legamre. That's the case. This is a kasha from Rava. Rava says the following thing. Rava. Shomer shemasla shomer. I gave my animal or my item to a shomer to watch, and he decided he's going to give it to somebody else. He gave it to somebody else, and now something happened to it. Who's responsible? Shomer number 1 or shomer number 2? Shomer number 1 is. Shomer number 1, that's what Rava says. Shomer shemasla shomer chayev. Why? Because the owner could say, listen, I trusted you. Who's this schlepper that you brought in here? I don't even know this guy. Who are you to give it to some other guy? That's what Rava says. So our Mishnah seems to say, though, that if you gave it to a shomer, no, the first shomer is pater. Seems to go against Rava. Amalcha Rava, no. My muscle roa le barzile. And our Mishnah, when he says you gave it to a shepherd, it's not some unknown shepherd. It's his own apprentice. In other words, people understand the urche de roa le memsel barzile. When you give something to a shomer, these guys who are shomerim, you don't know who's going to, you give it to a security company, right, to watch. They have a lot of employees, So when you gave it to the boss, he's going to give it to somebody else to watch, one of his flunkies over there. That's one of his apprentices. So that's what we're speaking on Mishnah. In other words, Rava could maintain, yes, when you give it to a stranger, I didn't ask you to give it. I asked you to do me a favor and watch this. What did you give it to that Shmendrik over there? He doesn't, I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all. You shouldn't have done that. But if I gave it to a shomer and he gave it to his apprentice, that's understood that he might give it to his apprentice. Some say the other way. Since the Mishnah says he gave it to a shepherd, he didn't say give it to somebody else. My masul roa. What does it mean? He gave it to a shepherd. Masul roa basila. He gave it to his apprentice shepherd. The shepherd gave it to his apprentice shepherd. That's normal to do. But somebody else not. And it's from our Mishnah. That's what the Mishnah means. That's a proof to Rava. Rava said, as we said, if you gave it to somebody else, I gave it to you, and you gave it to somebody else to watch, and I don't know that guy, I don't trust that guy, you're responsible. Shomer number 1. Our Mishnah is only speaking about where you gave it to an apprentice. So our Mishnah is a proof to Rava. Mar says, no, Amilo, Dilma Orcha the Milsiktani, Boed the Lacher. My Mishnah, you can't tell the proof to Rava one way or another. Rava says clearly, if I gave it to you and you gave it to somebody else, you're responsible. I don't know that other guy. When our Mishnah says, though, you gave it to a shomer, could be that it means, it could be that it's against Rava. Maybe it means I give it to anybody else, it's okay. Or it could mean maybe it's his apprentice. So from our Mishnah, you can't ask a kasha on Rava, nor can you prove Rava's case. Itmar, Shomer Aveda. Let's say I find a lost item. What's my responsibility? To guard it and return it. Now, while I find it in the street, I take it into my house, I'm guarding it. What is my rule? Am I a shomer chinam? In other words, I'm only responsible for negligence, or am I a shomer sacher? I'm like a paid hand. And what's the difference? If I'm a hired hand, I'm paid, I'm responsible even for Geneva and Aveda. So that's the question. It's famous machlokas. Itmar shomer Aveda. Some Gemara's ruling Bamitzi, we'll see it later on. Shomer Aveda. Rabba Omer Shomer Chinam. Rabba says you have a lach like a shomer chinam. You're not paid. Rabbi Yosef Shomer Sacher. Rabbi Yosef says you're a shomer sacher dummy. Rabba Shomer Chinam. What am I getting out of this? I'm not being paid. Nobody's paying me. God told me I got to watch it till I give it to you, so I'm not being paid. Rabbi Yosef Shomer Sacher dummy. Why? We have a rule that osik mitzvah patman a mitzvah. So if I'm busy washing this item and somebody comes along, can you make a donation to? We have a new fund coming up here. There's always donations all the time. I don't have to pay now. I can't give you money now. I can't give money to the poor. I'm busy with this. So I'm gaining something out of that. I'm saving that. I don't have to give tzedakah now. I don't have to give this. I don't have to do that. So with that pleasure that I'm getting that, I don't have to do that item. Notice he doesn't say the money that I save. I'm getting some pleasure out of it. That's also being paid having a shomer sacher. So Rabbi Yosef says that a shomer is a shomer sacher. Rabba says a shomer chinam. Some say, Rabbi Yosef said this is the reason. Rabbi Yosef shomer sacher dummy. Even the rachmane shabdei. Since God forced you to watch it, you don't have a choice. If you come over to me and say, can you watch my wallet? I might say, no, I don't want to watch your wallet. But if I find a wallet in the street, God told me I have to watch it until I return it to the owner. Since God obligated me against my will to guard this item, I have a higher responsibility because God made me do it. So I'm fulfilling God's wishes, and therefore, like I'm a shomer sacher. It's not my, if you're a shomer chinam, you have a prerogative. I want to do it, I don't want to do it. Over here, since I have to do it, I'm like a shomer sacher. Ace Rabbi Yosef l'Rabba. So Rabbi Yosef asked this kasha, the following kasha, to Rabba, right? Asked this to Rabba. Let's say you found an item and it's near the yeshiva, whatever, and somebody in the street, maybe from the kollel, must have dropped it. And so what you decide to do is you put it back in the spot where you dropped it. Sometimes it's better to leave it there if there's no identification marks on or whatever. Maybe the owner will find it. You put it there. Then you don't have to deal with it anymore. Nignava avda. But if it was stolen or lost, you're chayav b'chriyasa. My nignava. What does it mean, magnava? So what does that mean? If you're responsible for gneva aveda, that means you're a shomer sacher. So that's a proof that a shomer aveda is a shomer sacher. There's no my nignava avda. Lav nignava mikbeis. It doesn't mean we're stolen from his house. And therefore, and if he's responsible, that would prove that he's a shomer sacher. But of the mibeso, lo mimakum shechzira. What happened was this: it was stolen or lost from the place that he returned it to. So what does that help? If you return it to the place that it was lost, you don't have to deal with it anymore, right? Because you're a shomer chinam, you put it back, right? So So catch it. I read a little bit wrong. My nigna is so it's mashma you're responsible. No, my besa means it was stolen from the place that you left it. But we already said if you return it to that place, you're not responsible. So why is he saying afterwards nignava of the you're chayiv b'chriyasa? Why are you chayiv? It says if you returned it to the place, you're not responsible. You returned it late in the afternoon when people don't walk there anymore. But two things are taught here. You found this item in the street, and you're responsible to watch it. But if you put it back, if you return it in the morning, when everybody walks around there, and the person who lost it will probably find it there now, then l'makom shir ena, he'll see it definitely over there. He goes in and out there. It's in other words, you find a wallet near the yeshiva, and you picked it up, and you decided, I better put it back in the yeshiva there, be near, in the place where I found it, because the person who lost it will probably pass by there in the morning and he'll find it and he'll return it. So you're not responsible anymore. You did the right thing. You put it back where you lost it. Sometimes you see a lost item and you say, if I pick it up, nobody will, the guy who lost it will not find it. He'll probably come back, retrace the step. You have to look at the situation. Echzir b'tzarayim. But if you brought it back in the afternoon, lemakum shirena, a place where it's below shchiach al-munafik, that's a time when people aren't going to find it. Then you've been negligent. The lochaza, he's not going to see it. Then chay b'achriyasa. Not because you're a shomer sacher, says Rabbah. Rabbi Yosef says you're a shomer sacher. Chayving David Aveda. Rabbah says no, you're not a shomer sacher. You only chayv on chia, negligence. So if you returned it to the place where the guy will probably find it because you returned it in the morning, then you're absolved. You've done your duty. You have to do more. But if you returned it at night or in the afternoon when people aren't going to walk by there, and the person who lost it probably will not find it and it'll be lost or stolen, then you've been negligent. It's not just was lost or stolen. You've been negligent, and that's why you're chayav. That's how Rabbah learned. So again, this machlok, we're not done with this machlok because tomorrow we'll pick this case up again tomorrow. That Rabbah says a shomer aveda is like a shomer chinam. Rav Yosef says that it's like a shomer sochar, and therefore you're chayav on genev and aveda. And how are you reimbursed? You're reimbursed because you don't have to do a mitzvah, or because the obligation that God gave you forces you to be a shomer sochar. All right, pick it up here tomorrow, mister, and have a good day.
You have a jacket here for a few weeks now. What do you do with it? You pick it up and it's from the